be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. This is Kurt Wiscombe. To everybody who doesn't know, Winnipegan tattooist. You're my first Canadian guest I've done one of these with, actually. So that's pretty
yeah?
cool. Yeah, man.
Well, I'm honored.
Me too. So yeah, you started tattooing in Winnipeg. How many years ago was it?
Well, actually, I started out tattooing in Thompson up north, 800 kilometers
right,
north
Thompson.
of Winnipeg. And it was about, well, it was over 30 years ago now, about
Nice
32, 31, 32 years, something like that.
Been a while.
But, yeah, it's been a little while, yeah. But yeah, I started out up north just when I was a teenager. It's I was a teenager when I started out, and when I first became interested in tattooing, I kind of was always really interested in tattoo art, and I just I don't know. It was a long time ago, so it's weird to talk about it because it's like I have to put myself back to when I was like in high school and fooling around doing homemade tattoos, which is how I started out. So it's a weird place, a weird headspace to go, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting, I guess, to look back at that too and think about, how it was then as how it is now or whatever. It's a totally different headspace, I guess.
For sure.
Something really real about, just starting out doing homemade tattoos, I guess, And so I think about that sometimes. I think about like when I was a teenager, and I think about the smell of India ink, and I think about being in my friend's house or whatever, making homemade tattoos, and it was kind of a cool. It was a cool experience, I guess you could say. And I guess maybe that's one thing that I feel lucky I had that.
So you've always loved art then, from the very straight out of the gates. That's been
when I was a little kid, my dad used to read Easy Rider magazine, and they always had the centerfold was always the David Mann painting. I don't know if you remember David Mann art, but it was his biker art, and the rule in our house was if the centerfold fell out somehow, then I could hang it on my bedroom wall. So mysteriously, the centerfolds mostly fell out of his magazines. I don't know, cheap Staples or something, but. I was wiggling them out. So my bedroom had a lot of David Mann paintings all over it, and I think David Mann is kind of who, I guess that was my introduction to art, really, because he was a painter. Nice. Yeah, and I still really like that kind of art. I mean, it really depicted the whole biker lifestyle. That's really what he was all about, at least those paintings anyway. And it was interesting.
And we're talking kind of almost Frazetta style stuff, like realistic oil painting type stuff, or
I kind of discovered that later as I got older. I kind of discovered that through reading like Heavy Metal magazine and Conan the Barbarian comics, things like that.
What would you say excites you most about tattooing right now, and about art in general?
Right now, about tattooing, I was thinking about this because you sent me your questions earlier, and I was kind of thinking it over in my head a little bit. But what I think what I'm really excited about right now in tattooing, and it has to do with this whole pandemic, and it's actually something I was talking about a little bit before all this, was that there's so many tattoo conventions and so many artists that do so much work at conventions, and I really. And that brings a lot of attention. Everybody sees that on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, right? You see all these people posting from shows. And I've always thought that like a lot of real magic happens in shops. And so now the fact that there hasn't been really very many tattoo conventions, well, for a while there was none, right? The whole world was shut down pretty much. And now I think there's a few happening again. And that's exciting too. But what I'm really interested to see what other artists learned from that time working at home, and really just being stuck at home, and I wonder if these artists, some of them that mainly do like small one-shot pieces at conventions, if some of them were like, okay, well, now I've got the time, I'm at home, I'm going to do like a lot of bigger work, you know, and maybe like some sleeves or backs or something, you know, like that they normally wouldn't get to do it at a convention because of the time constraint, right? So I'm interested in seeing that, and I guess Instagram and all that is where you would see that, I guess. I mean, I just saw a piece you did about maybe 2 weeks ago, that dragon back that you did. I love that piece, and I was like, I was kind of jealous, and I was like, oh, I really want to do another dragon back, you know, and it's kind of funny because then 2 days later, this guy that I've known for years and years, I've been tattooing him for, I don't know, probably 25 years or more. He had a consultation booked, and he came and he's like, I want a dragon back, and I was like, no way. So I showed him the one you did, and I was like, can we do it kind of like that? And he's like, yeah.
Oh, sick.
So, yeah, so like kind of more traditional than what I normally do, but that's a direction that I'd like to explore a little more. So you inspired me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you've inspired me numerous times over too, man.
Thank you.
I mean, you've produced so much large work over the years. Like, would you say though? And I was talking to Luke about this too, because I just kind of assumed he'd done a bunch of bodysuits, right? But it's kind of like hard to get a whole bodysuit on a person. We're lucky if we get a whole back or a bunch of sleeves. Have you achieved any full bodysuits? Would you say that's almost 100% you?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that have full bodysuits that it's mostly my work, but it was all done in pieces. A lot of times, like I actually just finished one on a guy named Mark St. Pierre. He's probably he's on Instagram. Maybe he's watching. If you're watching, Mark, hi. But I just finished his bodysuit. But how it was done was we did the sleeves first, then we did the back, and then at one point he's like, okay, I want to turn it into a bodysuit, and which I'm glad at that point he said something, because we were able to kind of plan the legs and the stomach and everything to tie it all together into the existing work. As far as like designing a full suit from scratch, there's another guy named Travis who I had done years and years ago. I had done his full back in tribal. Many years ago. I was really interested in tribal, and I did tons of tribal. And so this was one guy had done his whole back of his body in tribal, and then he decided he wanted to do a bodysuit, and we planned out the rest of that and worked it in around the tribal. And I think the only other piece he had was like he had a band around his leg or something. Oh, wow. And so that was exciting, because that was one I got to really plan with not much other existing work except for this full back, right? And you know, that was interesting. But as far as planning a full bodysuit with hardly any tattoos there, I haven't really done. I've planned full backs with nothing there, and full upper bodies pretty much, but that's something I would really like to do. And I don't mind working with what's there. Like I enjoy that. I enjoy bringing things in. I remember years ago when I first went to see Philip, and I had a bunch of, like on my arm, I had a piece here and a piece there and a piece there and whatever, right? And I remember how he brought it all together to make it into a sleeve, and that was a long time ago, and even still, it really sticks with me. And so when people come to me with existing work, I kind of think back to that and think, how can we make this all work into like a bigger cohesive piece, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because I've often thought about that too, when you've got that random kind of mishmash of like everything, and you just give it one cohesive background, and then it's like, oh, now it looks like it was all planned that way suddenly, and there's something really satisfying about putting a nice background to anything, right? Yeah. So maybe that's part of it, is just getting really good at backgrounds.
Yeah, actually, well, I agree with you on that, and I really think that I really think backgrounds are important, and even the ending of pieces. You know, I see a lot of people that do like a beautiful background, but then it's cut off square or something, or it's just ends abruptly in the middle of an arm or in the middle of a chest or something, or a chest panel that looks really nice but comes all the way to the middle of the chest, and it's like, well, I guess you won't be doing the other side then unless you join the two,
Yeah.
like things like that. I really think like the edge and where it ends up on the body, that's really important as well. And it's not just all about like sticking something on the chest. It, like whenever I do a chest, I draw in like the line where it's going to go. I always draw the other side too, even if it's just the outline, just so I know how much space to leave in the middle or something. You try to anticipate future work.
Yeah, because it can be very easy to accidentally make that gap too narrow or something if you made it a little too close to the middle or whatever, right?
Yeah, and then you got to join it, right? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that either. That's a cool look, but if that's not what you're going for.
And I think you're right though. It's something that gets neglected. They're not necessarily planning ahead. They're kind of just going, well, here's this really cool piece, and I'll just kind of vignette the background, and that's good enough. But then what? Then how do you choose the next thing or whatever? With the exception, of course, of people doing extensive Japanese work, it seems to be heavily background based, right?
Yeah, and well, and that's interesting because one of my biggest influences or inspirations in Japanese tattoo art is actually Ozuma Kanami, who's not a tattooer. Well, he was, unfortunately. He's gone, right? But as a painter, I love his interpretation of tattooing on these the fantasy tattooed women. And I know a lot of it was really inspired by Horiyoshi's art, and I think he helped him with the designing of, like, learning the tattoo designs. But I love his approach to it. It's almost, maybe it's fresh. Is that the right word?
I think so, yeah.
Even though it's been years since he did all that stuff. But one thing like that I love about his paintings is how he can achieve like basically a full body design, a full body concept. But there's really no background. A lot of his pieces is just like two peonies and a snake, or there's one beautiful one where it's a peacock with peonies on the girl's hip, and and she doesn't need anything else. She's done. You know what I mean? It's full, and it's not completely full like a suit, but yet it is a suit, and it's something I think about often when designing anything, even if it's a smaller piece. To me, I think, well, if that's all that person ever gets, then that's their bodysuit, right? So if that's the case, then that piece needs to accentuate the entire body, however it sits, even if it's just some little tattoo here. It really needs to fit well, and then obviously you can build on it as well.
The importance of negative space, I guess, is a big part of that, hey?
Yeah.
The object itself becomes the border and the flow and everything like that.
And the silhouette of the piece. When you stand back, 10 feet away and see this beautiful silhouette. And I think one thing I really try to not do is get lost too much in the tattoo, in the design. I try to look at the human that it's on. I try to, like, even sometimes when, a good example would be like if I'm doing let's say an upper arm piece, and and I've got, I maybe pre-drew it, so I've got a few different sizes photocopied ahead of time, you know what I mean? And I cut them out and kind of look in the mirror to see which one looks good, right? So sometimes it's like, well, this design, it fits the arm, but then I look at this person and it's just like a big design, like fits a whole arm, and then maybe it's on some petite girl with a small head, and I look and I'm like, the tattoo's bigger than her head, right? And I look and I'm like, yeah, it fits, but it doesn't suit her. It's too big. It's too overpowering for the entire picture. Instead of, like, sure, it looks great on the arm. It looks great on the shoulder, but the entire picture, it's disproportionate. So sometimes I'll even opt to go a little smaller, even though it might be a little more of a challenge to make it work for the arm, but just so it suits the person. I mean, we're talking 10% smaller or something, right? But sometimes it makes a huge difference.
That's a really cool point, because, like, when you think about composition in general, right? You think
Hmm.
about, well, what's the focal point going to be? And what you're saying in this case, the human's face themselves should be the focal point.
Right.
Everything else should be complementary to that. That's an
Yes.
interesting concept. I've never
We're
even thought about that before.
we're decorating humans, right? Like it's one thing to make little pieces of artwork, and it's one thing to make even little pieces of artwork that stand alone on their own, but ultimately it's like, well, this isn't a piece of paper, this isn't a canvas, this is a human being, this is a person, and we're decorating that person. And that's always my approach to tattooing. I mean, that's what I've learned over the years. That's where I've ended up somehow.
Yeah, and it's weird too for an outsider looking in on it. A lot of times they're kind of like, wow, what a statement. What are you saying with that? What does that mean? You know? And half the time,
Oh
they're just kind
no.
of like, it looks cool. Like, does it really need to mean something? But then going back to like, this is for the human. Yeah, maybe thinking more like that, you're giving them something that is just more representative of their character or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to mean something, but maybe it just suits them good or something, right?
Yeah, but it's not to say that it can't mean something either, right? Like,
Sure.
like even like a lot of times, even the subject matter is one thing, but then how it's put on, like the layout, the silhouette, the composition, that's the part that is the decorating the person part, you know?
Mm.
I mean, if think about it, like if you were painting a car, let's say you're painting a flame job on a car, you're not just gonna paint a little square of flames on the side. No. You want the whole front of the car to look like it's a ball of flame whipping down the highway at, 100 miles an hour, you know? You don't want just some little thing on it, right? So,
Yeah.
like, even like, that's like whenever I tattoo bikers, for example, I always get them to do this in the mirror. I'm like, okay, do that, you know? How does the tattoo fit? Oh, okay, because that's how it's going to look going down the highway.
Yeah, that's true.
You
That
know, do like
outside arm
some,
thing.
we've all done like a flame job coming off the wrist or something, right? Or sometimes I'll even make a traditional Japanese motif where it's like wind or smoke or fire or whatever, but you can still do it so that it looks like their hands are the ball of flame, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
And if they hadn't told me, oh, my thing is riding a motorcycle, I might not have considered that. But the minute they said, I ride a motorbike, it's like, oh, well, we got to make it look good when you're ripping down the highway then.
Yeah, that's what I like about these people who have really advanced, people like Philip and yourself and other people that have been doing big stuff, like Mick and Shige. They're thinking about when the tattoo is moving, the thing will move with it, and it'll complement it somehow, where it'll make it's almost like little party tricks with the tattoos. It's like you can make the koi fish swim, or you can but when it's done clever, it's not a gimmick. It's just like, oh, that's genius, when it's laid out and you see the thing in motion.
Look at my snake from Philip that was like, this is over 20 years ago, and like
it closes its mouth perfectly.
Yeah, and then like the flower on the inside, it blooms, and
oh wow.
I got this side here. I don't know if you can see. There's like a waterfall, and then when I open my arm,
right,
it flows into a waterfall.
It goes exactly into the crease,
and that's all stuff. That's all stuff I got in the '90s from Philip. So he was doing all that back then, and it's amazing, and he's only progressed. He's even doing even more cool things now, right? And
I think the tribal guys must think about this stuff a lot too.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's maybe something I picked up doing so much tribal back in the day, because that was all about body flow, right? It was all about moving, and like one thing I always loved when I was a kid was those Mad magazines where they had the fold in at the end. You remember, did you ever read Mad magazine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then it had like a weird picture at the end, and you fold it 3 ways, and it was another picture with another saying, and I always loved that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super cool stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I wanted to kind of talk about tips for improving design. I guess what I'm thinking about with that is like, maybe it's more the question should be like, how do we stay hungry and keep improving and not stagnate, you know, and
Yeah.
not just settle for like, okay, well, this is my level now and I'm just going to stay with that or whatever, right? Because you see that sometimes and
Yeah.
it's kind of disappointing, or you see even a decline later on.
Yeah. I have
When
seen that sometimes.
you know, somebody maybe loses their
And
steam and they're
Sandy.
just kind of like, hello, Sandy.
Well, I mean, for me, I mean, it's easy for me. I'm constantly looking at other people's work and, you know, seeing how good it is. Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff is so great for that. You know, I look at Instagram and sometimes I'm like, oh man, that's so good. You know, look at how good this guy is, or, you know, whatever, whoever it is. And there's lots of artists, more and more these days. Some of them I haven't even heard of, you know, and they just come across on your Instagram feed, and you're like, who is this? This guy's awesome. And I, you know, check out his work, give him a follow, and you know, sometimes I even take screenshots. I'm like, oh, I want to remember that one. That's a cool color scheme, or that's a cool the way he did that skull or something. It's neat, you know. I'm gonna try to, you know, incorporate some elements of that into the next time I do something like that, right? And that's what, for me, that's what keeps me on my toes and keeps me definitely keeps me inspired.
Yeah,
And it's
it's a
kind of like
good.
constantly kicking yourself in the ass, basically.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Taking that and using it for fuel rather than looking at it and being like, "Oh man, there's so much
Yeah.
good stuff, and I'm not there." Or you know, maybe some people even feel like now they're overwhelmed by so much, how many artists there are, how many of them are better than them, or whatever it might be, and it makes you feel smaller and smaller and smaller or something.
Yeah.
But it's really just that we can see more of the world, and the thing has grown. Of course, tattooing
Yeah.
has grown. But
Well, that's just it. You know, when you feel that smaller and smaller place, you know, like for me, when I start to feel small like that, like, and I think we all do if we're inspired by other artists. I think that's healthy, because
yes.
I think if you don't, then maybe, well, where are you going to go from where you're at now, right? You know,
Yeah.
there's something to be said for humility. But I think whenever I feel like I'm in that sort of small place, I just want to wriggle out of it, you know, and you know, sometimes that means doing a lot of extra work. Sometimes that means reinventing yourself or your work, or just, you know, trying to keep up, but at the same time keeping the flavor of the work that you do at the same time. You know, like I see an amazing artist on Instagram. It's like, oh, I love that guy's work or girl, and it's like, but I'd love to be as good as them, but I'm not them. So I try to take, you know, inspiration from it, and just do with what I have and push it maybe in that direction or something. I always think of doing art not so much as like whipping around on a motorbike, but steering a big ship. You know, like just steer it a little bit, and you'll maybe slowly go there, you know, and maybe you get there, and you know, that's the way I think of it a little bit. It's not, to me, it doesn't turn on a dime. I think if it did turn on a dime for me, it would be too erratic.
Yeah.
You know, one day I'd be doing this, another day I'd be doing this, you know, so it's like, you know, I have my interests, I have, you know, a variety of things I really like to do. And then every now and then, maybe I think of a different way I want to try to do it. So I slowly steer the ship in that direction.
I was looking into sort of like art movements for a while there, and I was kind of like thinking, like, man, what is happening now you know, what is representative now? And some of the bigger ones, maybe I can think of, you know, you got like that whole visionary arts movement, or whatever they want to call it, where it's more like to do with psychedelia and spirituality and all this stuff. There was a boom that happened there thanks to Alex Gray and you know, some of his art church disciples, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, there hasn't been a whole lot of giant movements, although within tattooing there was, of course, the art fusion movement.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which was not strictly just tattooing, but when it did come to tattooing, it was kind of like a huge deal, because it was like, look, we are fine artists. We're not just we're not just highbrow, like you know, doing whatever scratchy biker, whatever it is in people's heads when they think tattoos, especially
Right.
back then. It was kind of like that movement. You guys that were going to these shows and putting on these events and stuff like that. It really elevated tattoo. It really made the art schools take it more seriously, I think.
Mm-hmm. You think so?
I think it must have, yeah, because you can't deny when something is at that level.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember when there was so much of that happening, and it seems to be a little bit less now, but I know for a while there that was like there was so much collaborative painting going on outside of tattooing, and definitely, like, I remember a lot of art galleries wanted to hang the pieces, and a lot of art fusion things happened in art galleries. And yeah, that I think definitely one of the things I remember from back then was a lot of art gallery people were like, wow, oh, you guys can do this too, you know, and you know, and they were a little bit surprised. But I think one thing, and maybe I don't know if all tattoo artists feel this way, but I know, like, before all that, before even painting, before I really became really heavily interested in painting, I was tattooing. And I mean, I drew and painted as a kid and whatever, but then I became so engrossed in tattooing that I just kind of forgot about painting. And, you know, maybe I'd draw some flash or something, but, you know, then at some point I rediscovered painting, and painting really taught me so much about art in general, just from doing it, just from diving in. It was like, I was a little nervous at first, and then it taught me to loosen up. It taught me to not take everything so seriously. And you know, with tattooing, it's you know, this pressure. It's like, okay, well, I can't screw this tattoo up, right? Like, it's got to be exactly like this. Or you make the perfect lines. Or you got to blend it just right, you know. And with painting, it was like, oops, whatever. Just roll with it, right? Oh, that went a different way. Okay, well, you know, that's interesting. And it was like almost a polar opposite of tattooing. But what it did was it taught me to kind of find a middle ground where I could try to push painting in a way that it wasn't just so loose and all over the map, but also pushed me in tattooing to find a way to be a little looser with my tattooing, and not make it so precise that it loses its whimsy. You know, like you know, if you take a tattoo and make it all perfectly technical, this and that, you know, but sometimes your rough sketch was really cool, and it'd be just so cool if you could tattoo it like that.
Yeah, that's the human side of it, right? The thing that makes it more of a folk art. I think if it was all laser precise on everyone, it would look fake somehow. You know, it would look.
Yeah,
like
it would look like it would be maybe like, you know, like a wedding band doing a cover tune as opposed to the original band who doesn't do it perfect, and they do it with feeling rather than precision.
Yeah, and it's that subtle art of doing it ever so subtly, because if it's too much, then it's fucked. But if it's just that little bit of imperfection, it gives it maybe that
you know,
thing you're talking about.
In music, like I when I was younger, I dabbled in like recording and stuff, and one thing they have on like drum machines is they have a setting, and I'm not exactly sure what it's called anymore, but it's like it basically mimics human error.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's like, but it's inaudible. You can't really hear it. You can't pick it up. But like, what it is like, if you have a perfect drum beat, well, then it just sounds like a robot doing it, right? But if every now and then it's just a little tiny bit off, it kind of sounds a little more human. And I always think about that. You know, like, everything doesn't have to be so sterile and precise and perfectly mathematical and drafted exactly right, you know?
Yeah, I heard that they took Hendrix, a recording he did, and they put it on a click track.
Yeah.
And it sped up and slowed down and sped up and slowed down, and that was part of what made it like
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Right? And that the computer couldn't just make an algorithm to totally quite capture that
No,
part of it, right?
he had his own rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what made him Hendrix, right?
Yeah, man.
If he had perfect rhythm, you know, he might have sounded good, but he wouldn't have sounded maybe like Jimi Hendrix that we know. My point with because you were asking about the art fusion, and I was wondering if maybe a lot of the other artists, and why it was such a big thing for a while. I wonder if a lot of the other artists also got that out of it, and if maybe it was kind of interesting for a bunch of artists to get together and kind of discover that together, and also discover that we can work together and have this like synergy, and it was definitely something that was a growing experience for me, and I'm sure for probably just about everybody who did it and still does do it.
Yeah, it's very much like jamming, isn't it? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
and you can get a great guitarist who can't vibe well with other people, and the song might still turn out really great, but the ones in the moment might have only known that, like, oh, there was a bit of a clash during that part or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it always ends up this one thing that can only exist with the rest of the people there working together.
Yeah.
Such a cool concept.
Well, maybe a thought on that is like, if everybody is so loose about it, then obviously if everybody's loose and they're not married to what they're doing, drawing or playing music or whatever it is, you know, it's going to just flow and it'll just grow into whatever it's going to grow into. But one thing I found really interesting was the more the collaborative artwork that I was involved with, you know, at some point we tried to think, what if one person kind of took a lead every now and then, you know, and kind of like had a discipline to it, and it was like, okay, there's this flow. It's almost like putting the nozzle on the garden hose, right? So you get this garden hose that's just spewing out an endless stream of beautiful water. It's not stopping, nothing's stopping it, and it's like, yeah, but what if you kind of like, if everyone agreed, we don't have egos, we're all that stream of water, we're all doing the same thing, but what if we all just acknowledged that one person or one idea, that we were going to all agree to push it there and see what would happen? We might get the jet stream, or we might get the mist or whatever, you know, coming out of the hose. Like, you never know what's going to happen. And that was something I really find interesting with collaborating.
Yeah, it makes it easier to go into autopilot for the rest of them. It's like, okay, here's what we're doing. This is going to be a skull. Here's, you know, so-and-so is going to lay it out, and we're all just going to, now we can just go into autopilot and do what we know.
Yeah.
And then there's less thinking involved, and there's less risk because it's already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. Yeah, it's like being a jam band, or being like a band who you've got some real talented guy, and he's like, I've got all these songs. You guys want to learn them? Okay, let's do it.
Exactly. Yeah, like this exactly, like a talented jam band that suddenly finds a leader.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the leader is somebody that everybody respects, and the leader doesn't have to be a person. The leader can be just an idea. Okay, we all agree we're going to paint a dragon. Okay, just don't paint anything else. It's going to be a dragon, right?
Yeah.
And see where we can go with that within those confines. But then I wonder if that's like where it could go, where, like, you know, like an individual artist can do that, because an individual artist can sit down and be like, I'm going to paint this, and it's going to be that, and I'm going to push myself, and I'm not going to stop until it's exactly the way I want it. It's perfect, you know. To me, I wonder if a group of artists finding each other and finding that synergy can have the discipline enough to somehow harness that and focus that exact same motivation into art, you know. I don't know, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, it would be a challenge. It would be hard to do.
Yeah. And I mean, the flip side of the whole thing is like surrealism. With even there, you can have defined things, but I mean, surrealism in concept, right? Being like, this doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. It's got all these like symbolism everywhere,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And people might interpret all these different things, but it's more like some haiku or something where it's like everybody interprets something a little different, and maybe it says something about themselves, what they interpret, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of think about tattooing like that sometimes too, because it's like, if you get too hung up on that meaning, what if they changed their mind about what they wanted to represent on themselves? You know what I mean? At least if it was a symbol that could mean more than one thing, they could be like, oh, actually, it kind of meant this back then, but now it kind of means more like this to me, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's definitely, I think, definitely possible to do that with tattooing. Like, I know just from my own tattoos that I wear, like, I got my back done as a phoenix, and I said years ago that I didn't want to wear any symbols on my body because I was afraid of basically what you're saying. Like, I was afraid that it would grow meaningless to me, or it would become something irrelevant to who I am now, or what I believe in now, or whatever. You know what I mean? And so I was very hesitant to get any kind of representational symbolism on me. So when I wanted my back done, and I really felt strongly that I wanted to get my whole back done, and I'm sure you can relate because I know you have your whole back as well. But I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted, and I chose a phoenix tattoo because I felt like it was something that sort of represented at least my life up until then. It was not represented. Sorry, that's the wrong word. It was something that traveled with me through my life. It was something that an image that I always looked up to and aspired to, and somehow related to the whole idea of a death and a rebirth, you know, and emerging into a new life, or a new phase of life, or whatever you want to call that. And I always felt like, well, how is that ever going to get old on my body? Because to me, life is just a series of that a lot of times. And even if I settled in a place where that wasn't happening, the phoenix would always have my back, you know?
Mm.
It would always be meaningful to me, and even as I get older, it would still have its meaning.
Eternally evolving, and this sort of thing. Yeah,
so it's a tattoo I can aspire to rather than just wearing it as something that is decorative. But at the same time, it also is just decorative too. You know, like, I wanted to have tattoos because I wanted to be tattooed. I wanted to have tattoos, but I definitely wanted my back to have some sort of not necessarily meaning in a symbolism kind of way, but meaning to me as in it's not just a pretty picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting though. Like what you just said, it was like, it's almost like you have to live up to it because you committed to it. Like I did that with guitar actually. I years ago, I got a guitar tattooed on me. I'm like, I better fucking learn guitar now, otherwise, why do I have a guitar on my arm?
You got a guitar stuck on you, otherwise.
Yeah.
That's funny you should say that, because I got this tattoo machine. I don't know if you can see it. Here, I'll see if I can get it. Oh, jeez. I got this tattoo machine on me.
Oh yeah.
My friend John Cook did that on me when I was 18 years old.
So cool.
And it's held up pretty well, eh?
It's so good.
You know, that tattoo was done in 91, I guess. 91 or 92. But he was this guy John, he was like a traveling tattooer from northern Saskatchewan, and I was tattooing in Thompson at the time. And just all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get this phone call. I was sleeping, and he's like, "Hi, my name's John Cook. I'm a tattooer from La Ronge, Saskatchewan, and I got some friends up in Thompson that want me to come and tattoo them." He's like, "But I heard you're the tattoo guy up there, and I didn't want to just kind of waltz into your turf and start tattooing my friends without, you know, running it by you first," which I thought was really cool. And I was like, "Well, it's a free country. You can do whatever you want, right?" But he was like, no, it's respectful. And he's like, and I'll tell you what, I'll give you a free tattoo out of it if you want. And I was like, okay, well, you know, let's get together, right? And so we did, and it turned out that John was a way better tattooer than I was, and he became somebody I very much looked up to, and he taught me a lot of technical stuff about tattooing and just about how to make good line work, good shading, all that kind of stuff, you know. I was already doing, but he taught me how to do it better, like way better than I was. Right. And, you know, we ended up becoming friends, but during that, he was there, I think, for like a week in Thompson. And he's like, well, what do you want for your tattoo? And I was like, well, I don't know. It's either going to be a guitar or a tattoo machine, because at the time I was into music. I played in bands around town and stuff, and I was sort of serious about music. I really wanted to pursue that. And tattooing at the time was just something I was doing. I didn't know if I was serious about that, but I really was loving it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing John and seeing where tattooing could go, I guess that inspired me to want to pursue it more. So by the end of the week, I decided, well, if I get the tattoo machine, I'm going to stick with tattooing. That's going to be my pursuit. If I get the guitar, I'm going to stop tattooing, and I'm going to just make guitar music my pursuit. And I gave myself a week, and at the end of the week, I went and got a tattoo machine tattooed on me. And that was that, you know. And I ended up tattooing John as well.
And yet you still do both. I know you're an incredible musician as well. And
thank you.
You know, that's
yeah, but
cool
I'm not
too.
serious about it. For me, music's just a hobby. It's just for fun, you know. And I actually would really like to someday. I have a million song ideas in my head, and I really want to record them or write them down or something. But I always had this dream that someday I was going to disappear for like a month or two and just go rent a cabin somewhere out in the woods and just set up a recording studio in there and then spend like 2 months just making music. And because I really feel like to make music, I would need to do it without any distractions, and just life distractions. It just, for me, it just snaps me out of that concentration, maybe because I haven't really focused on music for so long.
Well, I think a lot of professional bands actually go out and record that way. They'll go rent a thing half a year and make their album, you know.
Well, I know Rush used to have a house with a recording studio in it, and they recorded like 3-4 albums there, I think. And it was just, they went there, stayed there, and recorded their music. And
I think maybe that's what the lockdown did for a lot of people with their art. It made them go, oh shit, I better do some kind of a body of something now, or work on something to keep myself occupied. And really that kept me sane. It really kept me sane, working on art and just getting it out to people and stuff. It was like I would have lost it if I couldn't have had something like that to focus on.
I felt unfortunately I through the lockdown I felt very depressed and uninspired to make any art. It was really a weird time, actually. I wrestled with it so much, and I think by the end of it, or when it was starting to kind of show an ending, at least in the first lockdown, that's when I decided to paint, like about a week before it was over.
Oh wow!
I did 2 paintings, and I was like, and it felt really good to do that. I should have painted the whole time, because I think it would have made it everything better. But yeah, it was tough. I felt, you know, but I definitely seen a lot of other artists using that time. Like one of my favorites was Robert Hernandez. Did you see what he created during the lockdown?
No.
His drawings, like, holy crap. He was like, he basically documented the pandemic. You know, like he did all these, I don't know, you'd have to go there and see it for yourself. Robert Hernandez on his Instagram, and just scroll back to all the drawings he did. Like he does these charcoal pastel drawings, and that was incredible.
Black and gray, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, and some colors, but yeah, mostly black and white. Yeah, but yeah, and then there was lots of guys doing stuff like that. Yeah. For me, that was one of the guys that I was every day like, what's going to paint next? You know.
What's happening now with the Skull and Bones Gallery? I know you've been putting on some incredible shows in the past. Because I know you expanded your studio a bit, right? Did you expand it into the gallery at all, or did you keep the gallery?
No. We're hoping to expand the studio. We have the space, and we're just kind of gonna take those steps basically as soon as the winter comes and the weather sucks outside. We're gonna spend our time inside renovating and all that kind of stuff, right? But the gallery, we had, before the lockdowns, we had a solo show with an artist named Scott Cook, who's a Winnipeg painter. And that's the last show we did at the gallery. Because after that show was over, it was like we were going to do something. We had another idea for a show, and that didn't pan out. And then it was like a month later that everything kind of the shit hit the fan, I guess. And yeah, and then and then I know we just kind of almost just left the gallery the way it is. But over well, we had, I think, three lockdowns. I think in the second lockdown, Sandy actually painted the gallery. She painted 2 walls, and we started rehanging it. And so at some point soon, hopefully, we'll have it all ready. Just been pretty busy, haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to really get in there and get it going again. But I'm looking forward to getting it going, because it's just a nice place to go into. Even sometimes, I know when I'm tattooing all day, and sometimes to go in there and it's nice and quiet and just look at all the paintings, and you're just like, oh, it's kind of a breath of fresh air, you know. And I know other people have said that too.
I mean, honestly, it was my favorite art show I've ever been able to have partaken in, and I wasn't
Cool.
able to be there, but to have
Yeah.
had my work in that gallery show was just incredible, and that's trumping the Toronto show at the ROM
Sure.
too. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
saying a lot. Like, that was a hell of a
Oh,
show
thank you.
that you put together. And
Well, we'll do it again. We'll do it again, and we'll do something else different and unexpected too.
nice.
We'll see what we come up with. I mean, you and I can put our heads together and come up with an idea.
Yeah, that would be super cool, man. And I guess before the lockdown, you got an apprentice. That was was. Have you had apprentices before?
No, the only
So
other
this was a
person
new thing.
the only other person I ever taught was Alex.
Mm.
You remember? But even that was as kind of a different, you know, circumstances. It was a different kind of a thing. But I mean, it was with Jack. That's like really the first sort of formal apprentice that I've had, and he's working out good. I just I came to the realization about I guess it's been about a month now that I didn't look at him as an apprentice anymore. I'm just going to go a little more into light here. We'll put this underneath here.
So
Yeah,
he's kind of
so-
graduated from that then.
Yeah, I felt like it. You know, I felt like he's kind of really grasping like the idea of starting projects now, and I don't know, something clicked. He seemed to click, and it was just like he's on a wavelength now, where I don't look at him as an apprentice anymore. I look at him as a coworker who's working with the same mindset, and so I didn't feel it was right to refer to him as an apprentice anymore.
Very cool.
So now he's my student,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's also my coworker now. So
Yeah, for sure.
and he's doing pretty good. And we collaborate all the time. We're always putting our heads together on ideas. Whenever he's putting on a stencil, he asks me what I think, and you know, and he throws his 2 cents worth in with my stuff too. And we kind of, at our shop, we all do that. I work with another artist now, Shayla, as well, and she's from out west. Yeah, and she started here. Well, she was supposed to start right when the last lockdown happened, but then so that didn't happen. But she started in July tattooing at the shop.
Nice. I've always kind of seen you as this anyway. Like, you're one of these tattooists that is kind of the eternal mentor for anybody curious who's in tattooing in a way. Like, you're always sharing information and talking about art, and like you say, having constructive criticism at the shop and stuff like that.
Well, I kind of think it's fun. I've always wanted to see other people do well. I've never been one of those people that gets off on other people having pitfalls. You know, I can't even watch those fail videos, you know, where they wipe out on skateboards and stuff. Some people watch them and they laugh, and honestly, I can't even watch them. I just cringe. I'm like, oh, I hope he's okay. You know, that's all I can think about. And you know, like I always want people to do well. I always want people to excel, and also in some way it's also a little bit selfish as well, because if someone does well, then they kick my ass, and it makes me want to do better.
Yeah, no, but it's a good motivator, I think. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily selfish. I think it's I think it's a good way to be, and it's a rare. I think it's a fairly rare thing to have, you know.
Yeah.
because you know we're always taught to be so competitive and blah blah blah
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. But you know, all of my favorite kind of heroes have always been like really humble and really like.
yeah, yeah. Mine too.
I really admire that because it seems more like they're deserving of it rather than they grabbed it and took it for themselves. It's more like I don't know. I just prefer that method, you know. Maybe
Yeah,
it's because I don't like sports. I don't know.
yeah. You know, I mean, maybe you and I can relate on that. I've never been into sports either, so you know, I mean, it's good to have a healthy competitive edge or competitive spirit from time to time because that's what keeps you sharp and it's what keeps you, you know, wanting to keep going. You know what I mean? So I guess that's good, but at the same time, I've never been so driven to want to be the winner or the guy on top or the, you know, the champion. I don't need to be that. I'm happy just to be a
Yeah,
part of something.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, trophies. You know, who really wants trophies? Is a certain type of people that want the trophies, and they
Yeah.
say, "Look, I'm award winning. I've got all this stuff to prove it."
Hmm.
And then you get the ones that are kind of like, well, let's let the work speak for itself, or whatever. You
Yeah.
know, let's make something together, and let's not get hung up on squashing other people to elevate ourselves or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
that's really good.
I think to me the work is what that's the proof is in the pudding, as they say. You know, and to me that's what's most important. I mean, trophies at tattoo conventions, that's fun too. I mean, sometimes nice little pat on the back once in a while, and I know I have a few in the shop that we put up, and mostly, you know, the people that won them get a kick out of seeing them in the shop, you know, and it's kind of fun. But to
Yeah,
me,
that's
that's not
true.
that's not what it's all about. And I don't want
Yeah,
somebody to come to me because, oh, I'm coming to you because you won that award or whatever. And it's like, that's great that it got people. If it got somebody to come and see my work and they found my work from that, well, then that's awesome, right? But
yeah,
that shouldn't be the only reason.
yeah. It shouldn't be the only reason. Yeah.
I don't think so anyway. But it's
What
all in good
about
fun. It's all in good fun too. I don't take it super seriously, that kind of thing.
for sure,
What
for
was I'll
sure.
tell you a really fun one though was when I convinced Sandy to go up on stage in the Paris show because I'd done her tattoos on her hips not that long before that, and we
The
were going to
chrysanthemums,
Paris.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And we were going to Paris, and I was like, oh, can you put him in the contest because they have a big jumbotron and all this, and it'd just be cool to see them on the jumbotron. Your tattoos. I just thought that'd be cool, and I didn't think she'd win or anything, and there was like 100 people in that category going up. It was just a fun experience, and she was nervous, so Titine went up there with her and was like, "Oh, you'll be okay," and all this sort of thing. And
Yeah, so the most prominent judges ever.
yeah, and the judges were Philip and Luke and
Oh wow.
Bill Salmon and Carrie Barba,
Yeah.
and then of course
Oh,
Tintin was up there
And everybody
as the
only speaks
announcer.
French, and I don't even speak French at all.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
So yeah, so she goes up and does this, and then all of a sudden, and then I went over to take a picture of her, right, and then, you know, like, look, there's Sandy up on stage, and then I went back to the tattoo I was working on, and then I hear was it Jordy was there, and he's like, Kurt, they want you up on the stage, and I hear Tintin, Kurt, get your ass up here, right? And he's like, oh, you won, and I thought, oh, really? Holy shit!
nice.
So I thought that was really cool, and for me, that was a cool one because mainly because of the judges were all people who I very much look up to and
Oh
admire
yeah.
and absolutely respect their opinions, and you know, so it meant the world to me that they thought it was a cool tattoo, you know, and
Oh, totally. Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that's an example where yeah, winning something like that is an incredible life-changing experience.
yeah. So that one was kind of cool, but yeah, but I mean, ultimately, even that, you know, it's a contest. It's just fun. If we would have lost, I fully expected us to lose.
Mm.
You know, if we would have lost, I wouldn't have been upset about it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what about let's kind of wrap things up here. Future plans or projects or anything, any book projects or anything like this?
Honestly, right now, I don't have any projects on the go outside of tattooing. I've really, since we've been this whole lockdown, you know, it kind of put me in a place where I was trying to like play catch up with my work, and so it's kind of thrown me into just focusing exclusively on my tattoo work right now. I would like to paint some more. I started a sketch the other day for the first time in forever. I know you and I were talking about some ideas last week, you know, and it kind of got me thinking, you know, I really want to do that kind of stuff, and you know, in time maybe we'll get back to that.
Nice.
And
Nice.
I guess this winter our focus will be trying to expand the shop and focusing on that too. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
we'll see. But I always have ideas. I never rest. So.
Is there anything you want to add or talk about before we close it up here?
I would like to say, be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.
Thanks so much, Kurt, man. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, man. Take care. Great talking to you.
You too, brother.
Nanu, nanu.
Nanu, nanu. Oh, I can't.